fake, and I brand fake into all guitars that are fake. If you get one near me, go ahead. I dare you. I brand it.
The Know Your Gear podcast.
Hey, I had a guy bring a guitar that he bought off of Facebook Marketplace for setup. It was not a Fender Strat and worth the $750 he paid for it. It is a Chender that was maybe $130. Kid brokenhearted. I had physically just been in a music store. I was at Zim's guitar store. As you guys know in Mesa, I like Zim's a lot. Zim's does, if you guys know in the Mesa area, there's Zim's guitars. He does extensively used, exclusively used gear and mid-price to lower price gear. He's not usually doing a lot of high-end gear. You're not going to walk in there and see a lot of, Gibson R9s and stuff like that. So it's a really more obtainable instruments that for the rest, the most majority people can afford and stuff. And he's really good on trades and stuff. And so I'll go there, especially when I got to offload a lot of the affordable guitars, because I can go and trade them to him and kind of figure out how to get guitars for other videos. Because again, it's life on YouTube is just another video, right? You're always trying to figure out another guitar to do. So anyways, my point is I was in there, and this was weeks and weeks ago, and somebody came in and they had a Gibson Les Paul they wanted to sell to him, and they actually wanted $700 for it. And he looked at it and he had that face, and then he showed it to me, and I was like, I had the face, and I know the pain of what he had to say. And he said it. He goes, "This is fake." And he's like, "What? I bought this." He goes, "The guy got it for a good deal." He said he paid $700 for it. Good deal, right? He got a fake Gibson Les Paul. He didn't get a good deal. But I mean, if it was a real Gibson Les Paul, it was like a studio or a standard, but he paid $700, which is, for a studio, good deal. For a standard, fantastic deal. The point is, and I said, that's crazy. And then of course the guy was really sad and left, like you said, brokenhearted because he'd been duped and cheated. And then Zims goes, "Man, it's happening more and more." And I said, when I was I told you guys, if you guys remember when I interviewed the CEO of CEO of Guitar Center, they had tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of chibsons there that had been, their stores had been duped, and they're just like collecting them up. The fakes are out there. The problem is that, the problem with fakes, besides the fact that they're fake, the problem with fakes is, if you guys ever watch, you see the news quite often, when they bring fakes in the country, you always see customs going, "We seized a container with like 500 fake guitars in it," right? Or fake watches or fake whatever. The problem though is all of the single importers, the guy who's buying his Chibson or Chibonez or Chender or whatever you want to call it, importing it in, and it's going to get through. And you don't realize, but there's thousands of you doing this. And then if you watch, because we've all seen it, they do 10 more because they're so cheap and they're having a good time, because it's a good time. You get to look, the thing about chibsons, besides the thing that everybody talks about, like I've heard all the arguments that they're not real guitars, that people are delusional and lying to themselves. The reality is you still get to buy a guitar you always wanted. And there's a little bit of excitement. Will it be as good or better than what you hoped? I'm not saying it's a good idea or a bad idea. Obviously, you guys know I don't like fakes. I don't like anything that's made to fraudulently take care, to con somebody out of money. But what's happening is, because they are bringing them in onesie twosies, they're getting through and they're accumulating. And I've told you this story before, and it's the one time, and I hate telling this story. I hate it so much, but I was responsible for somebody getting conned. And what happened was, I when I would do repairs, customers would bring in chibsons, that were Gibsons, and you'd go, "Oh, this isn't a real Gibson." But a lot of times they're like, "I know that. They just need me to make it playable and stick some real pickups in it and stick some real stuff on it and put a new nut." And I would do that. And one day, we decked out a guitar, we put a new nut, put a new pickups, something like that. Again, this is a long time ago, so if the details are a little muddy. The important part of it is, they got the guitar, and then they asked me if they could trade it into me. And I said, I don't buy fakes. And they go, "Yeah, but would you want to trade? What do you want to trade? Just trade it." And I think I gave them nothing for it, like $150, right? It was something low, $150. And I put like painter's tape on it. I wrote fake, and I put it on a guitar stand on the floor in the store. And of course, every hour somebody went, "What? Is that real?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm selling a real Gibson Les Paul for $199. I'm like, I didn't say that, but I thought it. I said, no, it's a fake, but we're disclosing it's a fake. And anyways, I figured I'd flip it, make $50, sell it to somebody. And this guy came in, and by the way, I want to just tell you, I was actually had a game plan, and this is why I was upset and why I'm upset with myself. The person that came in, I kind of knew them and I kind of trusted them. When I say kind of trusted them, I mean I didn't have any reason not to trust them. That's probably a better way to put it. And they said, I want to buy it. And I already knew I was going to sell it unless I sell it to somebody I knew I could trust a little bit, because I didn't want them to do anything with this guitar. And so they buy the guitar. And I said, okay. And I don't know if it was weeks or months, but it was a while. It wasn't a long while. It wasn't months, maybe 1 or 2 months, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. A store, another store who's now out of business, they've been sold. It was called East Valley Music, I believe, or something like that. East Center something music. Anyways, stores talk to each other. They were like, oh, did you hear what happened? And I go, what? And they go, oh, somebody sold them a fake Gibson and they bought it. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah. And we found out that was the one. I don't know if it was that. Actually, I think if I remember the story correctly, the person I sold to then sold to somebody else who then took it to them and duped them. And the person, this is why it happened. And I know what you're going to say because I'm going to give you details. I'm sure you're going to go, well, how did the store not know it's fake? Well, it's because the owner of the store had a wife or something and she wasn't into music, but sometimes she would run the store and she took it in somehow. So that's kind of the story I got. The important part is we helped them. I reached out to make it right, and it kind of all worked out. We got it all worked out. But the important part of the story is now when you see I have this branding iron, the branding iron of shame. I have it. I have videos. If you look up Phil Mcknight and the word fake, my videos come up. One thing I like to do whenever a client brings me a guitar and we discover it's fake is ask them if we can brand the guitar fake to ensure that this doesn't happen to anyone ever again. Another thing that you can do after we brand it is ask them if I can remove the logo, since that's the intellectual property and it doesn't belong on this guitar. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and remove that as well. We added the burned in fake in the neck, and of course it's also there right there on the body, and of course underneath the pocket. Now since the truss rod cover also said Devolve, we removed that and I put a KYG one there right there for Know Your Gear. We removed their trademark logo here. I have a branding iron that says fake and I brand fake into all guitars that are fake. If you get one near me, go ahead, I dare you. I brand it. I'll brand that sucker deep and hard and put it in a couple spots if I can. In fact, sometimes inside the cavity, on the back of the headstock. And if I can, if somebody will let me, I will sand that headstock off. I did a video and I got so much hate for that. They're like, this is so excessive. And I'm like, yeah, it's not excessive to the person that got screwed. They probably would appreciate it if somebody did that. That's the only way I would do it. So I'm basically trying to tell you, like, it's easy. If I could, and I don't want to say accidentally, I'll say unintentionally. If I can unintentionally screw somebody over on a fake guitar through a situation like that, where I was trying to do, I was just skirting my ethical line, and that's where I paid the price. And sometimes that's, it happens to the best of us. I'm not trying to give myself too much forgiveness, but I'm trying to, realize that I was just skirting the ethical line. But anyways, yeah. Do the fakes, and they're out there and they're getting worse, and there's more of them as people bring them in more and in. And so somebody always says this to me, and they're always going to put in the comments, but I get them overseas and I have them put different names on them. And good, do that. I can tell you right now, I don't care. I wouldn't care if somebody copied, any guitar, this Majesty, any guitar to the T and sold it to you guys. I don't care, as long as it doesn't say Music Man or the brand, or as long as it's not a, like I said, I don't mind replicas. I hate fakes. Companies get mad at me when I say that because they're like, yeah, they don't like copies at all. And I understand why they don't like copies, but I don't care about copies. I just don't like fakes. Brian says, Phil was a cowboy in a previous life. Yeah, it's like it was kind of funny. When I decided I was going to brand fake into guitars, I didn't know how to do it, because I'm definitely not a cowboy. So I remembered, I'm like, oh, well, when I worked at Old Tucson, they would sell little mini branding irons with letters. And I drove to Old Tucson. Well, I didn't go specifically. We were in town. I went to Old Tucson into the thing and I went to a shop and I looked to see if we get the letters. And I forget which one, but I can only find 3 of the letters and I couldn't get the 4th one. And I was like, this sucks. And I didn't want to buy them because I didn't have the whole word. I couldn't wear the fake. And so I was sitting there going, okay. And then I heard there's a real like cowboy branding, they probably brand cattle here in town. And I reached out to them and I go, how much to make me a branding iron? It says fake. And they're like, it was insane. I forgot what it was. Back then it was in the hundreds, but now it would feel like saying in the thousands, right? I was like, oh crap, I can't do that. And then out of nowhere, I'll never forget this. I was talking at the shop, and as my repair branch, there was mothers waiting for their kids to take lessons. And I said, yeah, I'm trying to find a branding iron. And this woman goes, oh, I brand stuff all the time. And I'm like, what? And she's like, oh yeah, I have a branding kit. You get them at Michael's. I'm like, what? And she's like, it's electric. So if you haven't seen it, the branding kit that I have, it looks like a soldering iron. And then at the end, instead of screwing on the iron tip, you screw on a letter and then the iron heats it up. And so when you do it, you got to do 1 and then you got to take it off 2. So that's how so that's how I brand it. I don't know why. I just thought it was funny. Yeah. Somebody says, don't let Slash show his Chris Derrick to Phil. Yeah. Well, as you guys know, I did a video of those Maxes, which are the Chris Derricks and the Maxes are ones. And, I've held those and that's a different animal. So you guys know those. So if you guys don't know what he's mentioning the fact that, there's a guy named Chris Derrick. He's passed away. And there's a guy named Max, and they make fake Gibson 59 replica guitars. And for a while they did kits, and for a while they did, guitars. And as you guys, if you don't know, Slash not only famously played a fake Les Paul on the albums, he plays one to this day. It's his favorite guitar. In fact, to this day, the Chris Derrick fake Gibson Les Paul. Slash plays a fake 59 Les Paul, and to this day, and loves it. And it's his favorite Gibson. In fact, if you want to laugh, it's watch what's his name? If you watch the Gibson does an interview with Slash. It's within the last year or two. And Mark Agnesi's like, what's your number? They do so you type in Gibson / guitar collection, and it's fast. You'll barely catch it, I promise. But if you watch that video, you'll see Mark Agnesi go, so Slash, what's your favorite Gibson out of all these? And he's like, the Derrick. And he's like, oh, the Derrick. And then it's done. That's the end of that discussion. And then they go on. So basically, Slash told Gibson to their face, his favorite Gibson's not a Gibson. But so you know, the Chris Derrick and the Max Gibsons are super, super accurate guitars. These are guitars that, yeah, if you bought one and you paid $500,000, you'd be really pissed. But people buy those for $25,000, $30,000 knowing exactly what they are. They're collectible in their own reasons. So I'm just trying to say it's a different animal. I'm not going to argue the ethics of it. I'm just explaining it is actually a different animal. Everybody seems to be aware of them that has them. I would be really shocked one day to see if one of those actually gets passed off as a real 59 Les Paul. We'll definitely hear about it. Or you won't. Maybe someone who buys a $500,000 fake doesn't ever talk about that. Yeah, Brian says you couldn't get a decent 59 reissue when Slash's was made. It was more like a Murphy Lab than a Gibson. Well, yeah, Gibson didn't do custom shop or Murphy Lab when Slash had that. But so you know, Slash wasn't necessarily looking for a Gibson 59. The story that Slash has told personally many times is he just needed a Les Paul. At the time of recording the album, he had a Jackson and a BC Rich, and they were looking for a different sound, and he was looking for a Gibson. And so he knew Chris Derrick because Chris Derrick did repairs at the back of a music store in Hollywood. And Chris had his fakes, not real ones, and gave him one of his fakes, and that's why Slash used it. So that's the story that Slash has told and kind of stuck to all the years. That's why he does it. So if you like this clip and you'd like to watch another one, you can click right here. And if you want to see the entire episode of the podcast, you can click right there. As always, thank you for your time and know your gear.